So if you have any questions about the Chalice Lighter program, want to know how to make contributions, just let me know. Thanks.
Kat informed us that there is no one signed up for coffee making next week. So I am going to do it, but I would love it if a second person helped me because there'll be less damage that way. Let's see. I also want to make an announcement that the West Side Pantry, run by Inland Oasis, is in need of volunteers. There's more information about that online. And our own little free pantry always needs donations. So if you're thinking about it on your way in, grab something that's non-perishable and we'll put it in the pantry. And I want to acknowledge that Janet Temple loaned me this hat today. She's making these. Does anyone know what this is a symbol of? Kat. Oh, Kat's she's raising her hand. I'm going to speak for her. In Norway, in the 1940s, the people that wanted to resist Nazis and what Hitler was doing, the women and men knit these red hats that have a significant tassel on them, and that was the symbol of resistance. So people started making these, and I have several patterns I'd be happy to share for any knitters, and the proceeds from the sale of those patterns are going to help fund what's happening and the damage that was done in Minnesota. And they're lovely and warm. I don't think there are any other announcements, so I will proceed with our territorial acknowledgement. The land on which our church is built is part of the ancestral homeland of the Nimipu, the people who were mistakenly called Nez Perce, or pierced noses, by French-speaking trappers and traders. We acknowledge the land is held in sacred kinship since time immemorial. The land and its peoples suffered immeasurable trauma brought on by Euro-American society. And we are working with its resilient peoples to show respect and contribute to the healing and nurturing of this Hiwetas precious land and all its peoples. We have a chalice lighter today. We are hoping that folks joining us via Zoom have a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. And Sophie is going to light our chalice today. Truth and the warmth of love we gather to seek and seek to share. As I said, I had Norwegian relatives, so that meant I grew up in places like Minnesota. And growing up in Minnesota, belonging to a church was simply expected. The unchurched and the non-believers were marginalized in the community. I participated in church, but from an early age, I was skeptical. I appreciated the teachings of Jesus, but sermons were based on male-dominated stories from the Bible, which made me uncomfortable. God was always depicted as a man, and the women had limited, not always flattering roles. This bothered me because most of the women I knew were kind, hardworking people who had great knowledge and wisdom that they were willing to share. In college, I left the church and discovered molecular biology. I studied, most of my life, DNA sequences and proteins, nearly identical molecular ingredients used by all life forms. Understanding natural selection made it possible to accept that we evolved We were not created or designed. I came to see myself as an atheist, and for a long time I was a silent non-believer. But that changed when I saw how religious doctrine was used to punish others and suppress scientific information. I became angry. I remember the day when Senator Jim Inhofe, then chair of the Senate Environment Committee, refused to allow an important bill addressing climate change to move forward and out of committee because he insisted that only God could cause climate change. Many fundamentalists followed his lead, denying climate science and regulations that protect the environment and wildlife, but also suppressing access to health care, bodily autonomy, and voting rights. What a tragedy. I began to push back and speak out against beliefs rooted in doctrine rather than evidence. Sometimes I was angry and impatient with the naysayers who were, as I saw it, stuck in religious doctrine. I recall the first time, maybe 10 years ago, when I heard Elizabeth, speak out against such injustices at a rally. She was courageous. I noticed that the positive impact that members of the UU made on the community, and I was impressed. After that, joining the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Palouse was easy. It was possible to let go of some of that anger and replace it with a different set of feelings, those of love and connection. Now, in addition to molecular biology, I also like physics, and I consider entanglement, where particles of the same origin, that be like all of us, remain connected even when separated by vast distances in space and time. And I like to think of entanglement as a metaphor for what holds us all together. That connection, that enduring bond, might be the force of love that we sing about at the end of each service that I find so moving every time. We have an opening hymn.
So our opening hymn is a round. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. I am the Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Stevens, and I am lucky enough that I get to serve this congregation as its minister. How many parts do I get to do today? Michael said 4. We said 3. 3? Okay. All right, we're going to try 4. So we're going to split the center part down the middle, okay? 1, and then people in the right-hand side of the balcony can go with group 1. 2, 3, 4, and people on the left-hand side of the balcony can go over here. We'll sing it all together through once, and then I'll bring you in and we'll see how it goes. It's going to be great. I invite you now into a time of meditation or prayer with these words by Emmylou Belcher. Let us take a moment to settle into the silence. Hear and feel your quiet breathing. Hear and feel the quiet of this room and this community of quiet people. As we sit in this quiet, feel the life that stretches between us, that fills this room. Feel the opening of all the windows of our beings and the full outstretching of our spirits as we reach outward to the life around us, beyond this room, throughout all creation. For this life, for the freedom we have to shape and pursue our lives, we are grateful and rejoice. Let's rest in the silence for a few breaths more. Amen, and blessed be. We have two readings to share with you. The first comes from the Little Book of Atheist Spirituality by André Comte de Sponville. Is there such a thing as atheist spirituality? Thinking back to the three theological virtues of the Christian tradition, faith, hope, and love, I would readily answer that it can be described as a spirituality of fidelity rather than faith, of action rather than hope, and naturally, of love rather than fear or submission. The emphasis is placed less on belief than on communion and transmission, less on hope than on action, far less on obedience than on love. These things, however, involve spirituality only in the broadest sense of the term, as a virtual synonym of ethics or wisdom. They involve not so much our relationship to the absolute, the infinite, and the eternal, as our relationship to humanity, finitude, and time. If we take the word spirituality in its more restricted sense, we shall need to go further and higher. At its utmost, spiritual life verges on mysticism.
Sorry, I'm trying to touch it. This is a poem called Why I Feed the Birds by Richard Vargas. Once I saw my grandmother hold out her hand, cupping a small offering of seed to one of the wild sparrows that frequented the bird bath that she filled with fresh water each day. She stood still, maybe stopped breathing, while the sparrow looked at her, then the seed, then back, as if it was judging her character. It jumped into her hand, began to eat. She smiled. A woman holding a small god.
Come on, choir. My colleague, the Reverend Tom Owentoole, has written a book entitled Wrestling with God. He's a big fan of alliteration, so he divides all people into 3 primary theological camps: affirmatism, agnosticism, and atheism. He then says that it's the manifest strength of Unitarian Universalism that within our theological embrace, adherents can honestly assume all 3 positions, sometimes even at the same time. When the 3 A's, atheism, agnosticism, and affirmatism, are clasped in resourceful tension, one's religious identity becomes hale and hearty, for each attitude brings a valuable gift to the theological table, providing a system of checks and balances. Now, I kind of wobble between the 3 camps myself. Whether I identify as an atheist, an agnostic, or an affirmatist depends on the day, the hour, mostly on who I'm talking to. In pastoral conversations, I do my best to meet people where they are. I try to use the same words, metaphors, and concepts that they use to convey my support, to show them that I'm listening with an open heart, to offer unconditional acceptance. Put me into an intellectual discussion, though, and my inner contrarian takes over. I typically take the position opposite my conversation partner, just because it's no fun if everyone agrees. So let me ask today, how many of you at some point have found yourself in the atheist camp? You don't necessarily have to raise your hand. I don't want to out anyone. But, I just was curious as to the approximate percentage. Now, Tom Owentoole thinks it's most useful to ask atheists, or ask ourselves when we're in that atheist place, about the God we don't believe in, because that leads to common ground. Most often, we don't know, the affirmatists and the agnostics don't believe in that God either. It would be very difficult to find a Unitarian Universalist who believes in the kind of God who created the universe like with a purple crayon. We don't believe in a judgmental or cruel God. For the most part, we struggle with any version of God that looks like Charlton Heston. In fact, one of my favorite theological jokes is about a conservative fundamental preacher who dies and approaches the angel at the gates with so much excitement. "Finally, I get to meet God, who is surely well pleased with me." Says the angel, "You may want to cool your jets a little. God is black, and she's not very happy with you right now." What I worry about, though, is that if we focus on what we don't believe, we run the risk of getting stuck in our faith development. So I've talked before about the stages of faith. James Fowler observed 7 spiritual stages that most people progress through somewhat predictably. As infants, the quality of care we get determines our basic attitude about the universe. Is it a safe and reliable place, or is it life dangerous and unpredictable? As young children, the lines between fantasy and reality are blurry. The spiritual work is to gradually learn to differentiate between what's real and what's imaginary. School-age children soak up tradition like sponges. School-age children tend to believe what we're taught with very little questioning. And that changes when we enter adolescence and young adulthood, as anyone who has raised children to adolescence or adulthood knows. We become more skeptical. We push back against this along with everything else. Most people reject at least some of what they've been taught, and some people reject most of what they had previously thought was true. Now, this is the first stage where people tend to get stuck. And Tom Owentoole's question, "What God don't you believe in?" can contribute to that stuckness. When I read some of the so-called new atheists, like Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris, I just get annoyed because I think they're stuck. They give all these arguments against religion and against faith and against God, but what they're really talking about is fundamentalism, and they are so flippin' arrogant. I heard one interview with Richard Dawkins where the interviewer was trying ever so gently to help him see that maybe it wasn't fair to paint all religious people with the same brush. Dawkins went as far as admitting that yes, his objection was to fundamentalist religion, but then he said flat out that he had no interest in dialogue with religious progressives or moderates. I believe the direct quote was, "I think they're fairly harmless, but they have nothing to teach me." I wanted to throw something at the speaker. See, the next spiritual stage, the one that we progress to if we can avoid getting stuck, is an awareness that none of us have a monopoly on the truth, that everyone has things to teach us, and everyone has things to learn from us. We learn to become increasingly comfortable with paradox and uncertainty, increasingly accepting of multiple viewpoints. Our capacity to live in the present expands, and our awareness and acceptance of life in all its fullness grows. If this process continues, we progress to the end stage, which is called universal faith, or sometimes enlightenment. We learn to treat every person with compassion, to see all people as part of a universal community organized according to the principles of love and justice. Skillful atheism, then, mature atheist spirituality, isn't defensive or angry. Mature atheists craft their answers to great spiritual questions without invoking a deity or defaulting to particular mythology. The conversation about what atheists do believe is way more interesting to me and far more productive than rehashing the reasons why fundamentalism or one's childhood faith no longer works. The author of our first reading, André Comte-Sponville, describes atheist spirituality as consisting of fidelity rather than faith, action rather than hope, and love rather than fear. Did you catch that in the reading? So let's parse it a bit. Fidelity rather than faith. This is Comte-Sponville again. Faith is a belief. Fidelity is more like an attachment, a commitment, a gratitude. Faith involves one or several gods. Fidelity involves values, a history, a community. The former calls on imagination or grace, the latter on memory and will. And while faith and fidelity can go hand in hand, for atheists, faith isn't necessary in order to remain faithful to the work that is asked of us in this life, the work of learning and growing in wisdom and skill, the work of creating the beloved community, the work of healing the world. Let's move on to action rather than hope. In the face of challenges, rather than hanging in and relying on a deity to come to the rescue as a reward for having the correct beliefs, atheist spirituality acknowledges that no one's going to come to our rescue, except maybe our fellow humans. So we'd better get off the stick. Here's another joke. Once, during a terrible flood, a devout Christian wound up trapped on his own roof. Some neighbors came by in their canoe and offered to give him a ride. "No," he said, "I'm faithful. God will save me." Next, the local fire department arrived in their motorboat. He again refused to climb in, saying, "God will save me." Then a Coast Guard helicopter arrived and lowered a ladder, but he refused to get on, saying, "You know it, God will save me." The water kept rising, and the man drowned. When he arrived at the gate, he was quite distressed. "How is it that I'm here? I never wavered in my faith." "Sir," the angel said gently, "we sent a canoe, a motorboat, and a helicopter. What more did you expect?" Last but not least, Comte-Sponville talks about love rather than fear. Now, fear of hell motivates many Christians to behave in certain ways, believe in certain ways, and vote in certain ways. For atheists, it's love of this world, not fear of what might come after we die, that motivates us to do good and to be good. And this is why love is at the center of our faith. This is why we sing about it every week. Even if some of you are getting sick of it, I don't care. This is why pretty much every sermon I've ever preached comes back to the importance of love. I find that differentiating between love and fear is more helpful than talking about good and evil. I also find that just as, according to Solzhenitsyn, the dividing line between good and evil runs down the center of every human heart, fear and love are at work in each and every one of us all of the time. The task for faithful people is to learn to tell the difference. What are the voices in us? What are the responses, opinions, beliefs, and choices that are loving, grounded in love? And which are the ones that are corrupted by fear? By ego, which is a fear of losing love, by greed, which is a fear of scarcity, or by cruelty, which arises from the fear of suffering in a really complicated way that I probably should do a whole service on at some point. Which leads us to another question. If one doesn't believe in a deity who assigns meaning or purpose to our life, where does our sense of direction, the internal compass, come from? There are two sides to the answer to this question. The first has to do with morality and ethics, and the second with vocation. Now, ethically, the atheists I know are some of the most upstanding people I know. Turns out most of us are less forgiving of our own mistakes and shortcomings than any deity ever imagined. Understanding morality as an evolving human consensus, we constantly hold ourselves to the highest standards available to us. It can be actually kind of exhausting. Many atheists struggle with personal perfectionism and a sort of societal hopelessness, helplessness that grows out of knowing that everything needs to change, but not knowing how to affect that change. I could speak as someone entrenched in American consumer culture. I do my best to reduce, reuse, recycle, shop local, but there are about 1 million things I don't do that I know I should be doing and that I beat myself up for not doing. Sometimes because I'm too lazy, sometimes because I can't find an alternative. When it comes to consumer culture, I feel a little like Heath Ledger's character in Brokeback Mountain. I just can't quit you. But when it comes to morality, atheists try harder, think more, and beat themselves up more than people who believe that all you have to do is choose the right creed and everything will turn out okay. As for vocation, or calling, rather than having an external source, someone calling us, atheists have to locate their sense of who they are and, more importantly, why they are, why we exist. We have to locate that internally. Life is a process of going inward to reflect on our purpose, our sense of meaning, how we can offer our authentic gifts to the world. And then we try, and then we go back and revisit and refine over and over again. Ideally, we become more mindful both of our strengths and of the things that are getting in our way. We come ever closer to living the life that, in Parker Palmer's world, is in us wanting to be lived. But it's an asymptotic journey, right? There's not a right answer for any of us. One question that might come up, how do atheists avoid becoming too self-centered? Through a constant engagement with our beloved community, which offers accountability as well as that sense of belonging that we love so much. No atheist is an island. Always, in one hand is in our integrity, our sense of who we are, and in the other needs to be an openness to others, a willingness to hear all of the ways our actions impact others, and a willingness to change accordingly. and others includes the interdependent web of all life, this poor, endangered planet of ours. Now, thinking about the planet and the interdependent web leads us to the question of how atheists nurture a sense of connection and awe. So, let me ask you, do you need to know all of the details about the artist to appreciate the beauty in a work of art? Nope. Similarly, atheists don't need to reflect on a creator in order to appreciate the beauty and wonder of the creation. Actually, I think the real question isn't how do we nurture a sense of connection and awe, but rather, living in this miraculous, amazing, beautiful world, how can anyone not feel a sense of connection and awe? You know, you zoom in and look at the cellular structure of a leaf, and it's astounding. Zoom out and reflect on the vastness of the universe, the sheer unlikelihood of this particular life, my particular life, arising on this particular planet, circling around a mediocre star in a remote corner of the galaxy. How does that not fill you with awe? If that fails, look at a baby's hand. Look at the curl of someone's ear. Miracles abound, whether we know all of the scientific explanations for them or not. However much we learn about this world, there will always, always be more to discover. Knowing the how doesn't keep us from wondering at the why and bowing down, absolutely stunned at the wonder of it all in gratitude. And not just gratitude and wonder knock us down. We might ask how atheists handle grief, handle death. When it comes to grief, I'm not sure anybody really handles it. It kind of handles us. The best we can do is hang on for the ride. But rituals do help. And I'll say this, our memorial services, our UU memorial services, which rarely mention God at all, but celebrate the life of the person who's died, those services are way more powerful and healing than anonymous masses or gratuitous sermons on accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Now, I admit it can be comforting to imagine our dearly departed cradled in love or safe in heaven with our ancestors. But here's the truth. No one knows what happens when we die. So atheists make peace with not knowing. They focus on the things we do know. Our lives make a difference. We leave a legacy of love, and that legacy matters. That legacy lasts. So we focus on being kind and good here and now, not because we're hopeful that someday we'll make it through the gates and be rewarded with a white gown and a halo, but just because it's the right thing to do. As for the old saw, there are no atheists in foxholes, the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers say differently. It is possible to face the great unknown of death with nothing but courage, determination, and acceptance. Sometimes facing death is easier, though, than facing reality. We are living in uncertain times. We might ask, how do atheists keep hope alive? And this is actually, I think, the hardest question. I can tell you what helps me. Sometimes I take the long view. I look back not 100 years, but 1,000 years. And there's no doubt that as messed up as things are right now, the vast majority of people are better off. The planet isn't better off. However, I watch with admiration and awe indigenous activists, young activists, and all of you, those of you who are working so hard on climate issues. Current administration aside, I think there's a lot of evidence that things are starting to turn and shift. Not fast enough. There's going to be a lot of needless suffering on the part of not just we human animals, but all of life. But better late than never. And There are natural forces at work here that are beyond our control. Whatever happens in human history, I have no doubt that the planet will survive and that life in some form will find ways to thrive. I also hold on to something that someone said to me a while ago. I can't remember exactly who or when I heard it. She said, "We don't know whether our task right now is to provide hospice care to a dying way of being or to midwife the new way. But we need to remember that either way, the work is the same. Stay present, acknowledge loss, love each other as best we're able, and keep on breathing." The atheists I know best have deep, wide souls, although they might not admit it. When you can't take these big questions, these big unknowable issues, when you can't just move them into a column labeled God, you have no choice but to make space for them in your own spirit, in your own being. It's a brave and challenging path. It's a compassionate and enriching path. It's a path that's valid, and more, it's a path that's valuable. And the best part is, none of us need to walk it alone. So be it, and blessed be. Let's sing together hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Please be seated. Our closing reading is The Moment by Margaret Atwood. The moment when, after many years of hard work and a long voyage, you stand in the center of your room, house, half-acre, square mile, island, country, knowing at last how you got there and say, "I own this," is the same moment when the trees unloose their soft arms from around you, the birds take back their language, the cliffs fissure and collapse, the air moves back from you like a wave, and you can't breathe. "No," they whisper, "you own nothing. You were a visitor time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming, 'We never belonged to you. You never found us. It was always the other way round.'" Let's sing together, "There is a Love." As I'm sure it's obvious by now, you don't have to believe in God to be a part of this community. But what you do have to do is believe in love. And that's not a constant thing. We all have moments and days where we wake up and we forget, where we question, where we doubt. And that's why we need each other. That's why we need each other, so that when my faith falters, I look at you. When your faith falters, you come to me, and we hold each other and we say, I love you, and love is all that matters, and we're going to make it, one way or the other. Go in peace. Come back next Sunday. Okay. Please say with me the words to embody our chalice flame. Whoops. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again. And you know what else we forgot? We forgot to say hello to our folks on Zoom. So maybe we can say goodbye to our friends on Zoom. Folks at home, can you turn your cameras on? Okay, goodbye. We love you. All right, go in peace. Come back next Sunday.